Good afternoon, everyone. If I could have your attention, we're now within visible distance of the finishing line of this conference, and we have a 15-minute feedback from the conference rapporteurs, including a vote of thanks, which will be given by Paula, and then we shall go straight into the AGM. And the time will really be quite tight because I believe the buses are leaving at 6 for the conference dinner, and some of us are still wearing our conference jeans and need to change into our party suits. So we shall not have very long for the AGM. So we do have an agenda which will be put up on the projector in a few minutes. But before that, we have some remarks from Atik Ghosh, who is the overall conference rapporteur, who has the unenviable task of capturing the breadth and depth of the discussion of the last 3.5 days. And who's going to tell us how, he said he would like to make a few remarks. And Sudip is going to give us the completed report on the 3 plenary sessions that we had. So without further ado, I think let me hand over to you from
Thank you, Chris, for the kind words. And good afternoon. I would begin by thanking the rapporteurs who have worked through the day and through the night, sacrificing all the fun they could have otherwise had, writing reports for me and filing them in, and they're still coming in. So I have about 85% of the reports with me, and there have been some people who have come forward and helped me. The report, this is what I have been asked to tell you. The report would be ready for publication and circulation by the end of this month. It should be a longish report, and once it's completed, we'll put it in circulation. With that, actually we are running really short of time, so we'll move over to Dr. Shudip Basu, who rapported all the plenary sessions, and he's going to talk not at some length, I guess, but briefly comment on the themes and the critical concerns that engage the plenary sessions.
On my arrival in Calcutta, I was told to cover the plenary sessions. I didn't know about it before, but then 3 plenary sessions, 11 speakers, not a tall order, but then once I realized that the talk was taking place in a very unstructured way, I had to gear up and listen to what is going on. Well, all these 3 presentations, in as much as these presentations have provided glimpses into events, processes, and contexts, it has also provided insights into what we can, and through these unstructured conversations, into structures of feelings surrounding these events, and also the human spirit that has prevailed over dark periods of our history, of the subcontinent. I'll go one by one. The plenary session 1, which is on the partition experiences in South Asia, memory, literature, and the media. Just kind of read out because each one has to be dealt with. Partition has evoked, as we know, bitter memories for millions whose lives have changed irrevocably. It has reshaped the cartography of South Asia. The effects of the partition on groups living on the subcontinent has been as varied as the variegated politics of remembering partition. The 3 speakers gave a very short, terse, and an illuminating reflection on the partition, of shared memories of murder, mayhem, hope and despair, particularly during these tumultuous times. In Ibn Abdur Rahman, in his eloquent rendition, recollecting stories from his childhood, spoke about the desperate, albeit ambiguous choices that were made by families, heads of households, in the wake of communal riots across the subcontinent, in the mid-40s of the last century. Particularly of interest was not so much the immediate hostilities and atrocities committed by Hindus and Muslims upon each other, but how partition made individual hostilities permanent and created in its wake insanities of many kinds. Singling out Sadat Hassan Manto's voice in the wilderness, he harped upon the futility of the partition and its ramifications. Let people decide their own fate, since they still have compassion left, was his passionate call. Anis Zaman, in a similar vein, brought out his personal memories of the partition, recollecting his early days in Pak Circus, days of the Pakistan movement, rumors of Sikhs and Hindus attacking Muslim colonies following the outbreak of communal riots in Calcutta, in the eve of the independence, of the dilemma confronting families having to choose their nations, of migration to a new country and subsequent displacements and return, all brought to relief the conjoining of the personal with the collective memories and representations of the partition. Ritu Menon brought to prominence the role of family memory in the construction of the self and the nation. She stresses upon the importance of rewriting feminist historiography, which enabled the writing of social history or the history of the people, while underlying the ephemeral notion of the nation, which remained the central motif of the two remarkable novels written by Kubertenheimer. Ritu Menon also points to how the author decenters the masculine patriarchal nation by introducing hybridity and flux. Therefore, what kind of literature and literary renderings endures even the project of nationhood is the moot question that perplexes. The second plenary session on development, conflict, and displacement. Behind conflicts in most developing countries is the development paradigm. The marginalized sections of the society have suffered further marginalization as a result. But how have citizens, people, responded to the realities of development, displacement, and also conflicts? How can we begin to rethink development and what are the alternatives? In attempting to respond to these questions, the speakers in the panel shared their views and experiences of being part of civil society movements and people's struggles towards inclusive development. Recurring concerns in these discussions have been how marginalization is part of the process of development and conflict, the difficulty of finding just solutions, and the potential of various kinds of extremism and terrorism, particularly when just solutions are not at sight. Walter Fernandez brought to light the deficiencies in the database of the varied types of displacees and the need to document them. The disparity between official figures and the figures from surveys conducted by civil society groups and research organizations is also revealed. Subalterns predominate the category of IDPs. 40% of the IDPs are still tribals and over 20% are the Dalits and the scheduled castes. Accurate data of the other backward castes are still not known. He stresses that in actual practice, R&R, or resettlement and rehabilitation in India, has only meant resettlement but not rehabilitation. Poverty, landlessness, child labor, and marginalization has grown as a result. And what we witness is the spread of Maoist insurgencies in deprived pockets in India. Anuradha Talwar related her experiences of working with the Pushtin Bangla Khet Mazdoor Shumiti, a non-political organization struggling for people's rights over land. She aired her concerns over the lack of legitimate forum for people to express their views about development projects. The law provides no leeway for those who do refuse to partake in the development process. The woeful lack of consultation at the level of ground sabhas further exacerbates the problem. She also states how the institution of the courts, while it provides a way to express dissent, reaps no returns for the displacees. Jehan Perera, from Sri Lanka, spoke of how the war in Sri Lanka and the attendant displacements brought the country back to the independence era. where the predominant challenge remains one of creating a united Sri Lanka in a majoritarian Sinhalese society. The solution is to devolve power to the regions and have independent institutions. The present Sri Lankan government, however, appears to take the accelerated development path in order to push ahead. These are ominous signs, as he says, of history repeating itself in the form of growing centralization, of commemorations and revivalisms of various kinds in erstwhile LTTE-dominated areas in Sri Lanka. And let me come to the last plenary session, the gender conflict displacement, the case of India's northeast and Nepal. What comes out through these presentations is how narratives of violence and protests consumes the collective consciousness and structures the everyday life in the northeast. But then how do we arrive at a pan-northeast gender identity or even a northeast identity? The difficulty and the need to transcend sub-identities in conflict situations has also been expressed. Rakhi Kolita pointed to the discontentment surrounding war and conflict, the typical role of women as combatants. What insurgencies mean in a geostrategic space like the Northeast? What happens to women with the liquidation of these groups, particularly in Assam? While male cadres have been inducted in some form or the other, women have disappeared in the last 5 years, as she observed. Women combatants have tried to cope with their predicament in a post-conflict situations and have shown exemplary role as well in peace-building measures. How often are women represented in post-conflict processes? What about transitional justice in these situations? And lessons learned are some of the other concerns that were raised. Vijay Lakshmi Brara talked about how ethnic identity in the Northeast context becomes the greatest marker of individual gender and other kinds of socialities in the Northeast. The way in which bodies, events, processes get ethnicized is the most disturbing element. While self-determination is valued in itself, at the level of the community, these values are forsaken. Marginalization and the breakdown in the families ensue. The need is for a Northeast women's movement, is her passionate plea. Keshali Shichi. Conflicts have been between states and communities, ethnic identities. The impact of these conflicts on women has been the most devastating, was her observation. And different forms of violence is something that we have to also come to terms with. Gina Sankham emphasized on the threat to violence as a result of the operation of AFSPA in the Northeast. It is in this context that women begin to also act as shields, and often voluntarily. Their vulnerability accentuates as a result. But what is important is the awareness of the law, which is in some sense absent. Shiva Kumar Dungana spoke of the fact that if one has to tell the world about one's suffering, is the biggest hurdle. Women particularly, who are going through moments of intimidation and torture, suffer the most. Silencing of their voices and underreporting is the bane of the situation. Implementation is at a low premium in most cases. The need for women's participation in capacity building is the felt need of the hour. That women need to assert their identity as women was expressed despite internal differences that we observe in the Northeast. I think I will.
Thank you both very much. Just remind us again the date when you think you'll have
the end of this month.
end of January 2030. We look forward to reading the full report that sure it will be an excellent document. Thanks for the summary of the plenaries. I'm going to hand over now to Paula to offer a vote of thanks.
With the permission of the chair, may I just sit down and talk? Well, I sort of delivered a formal vote of thanks at the beginning, but this is for all of you. Thank you. I must begin with all of you now who have come to Calcutta. Thank you so much for coming to Calcutta, for making this event possible. I know a lot of you might not be completely satisfied. A lot of you might have issues. We may not have been able to fulfill all your hopes and imaginations, but still I would like to say, whatever we did it with a lot of love, a lot of affection. So I hope soon enough you will forget the hitches and glitches and remember our affection, remember our friendship, and remember our warmth. So thank you so much. I must also thank the organizing committee. A lot of very young people participated in the organizing committee, and can we have a round of applause for our young volunteers? I don't know about you, but they just loved you. Thank you for coming. Thank you to all the institutional partners of IASFM. I wish in my lifetime I could do another IASFM in India. It was such a tremendous learning experience for me and my team. I would like to mention the Refugee Law Project, Makerere, RRN, ISIM Georgetown, ActionAid, Oxford University Press, Indian Council of Social Science Research, IDRC Canada, Calcutta University, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies, Society for Participatory Research for India, Peace Research Institute Oslo, SAGE Publications, and the Government of India, Ministry of Foreign Affairs for giving us the political clearance to do this, and the Government of West Bengal, Ministry of Transportation for giving us at a very discounted price the buses for the program, the city tour that we could do one evening. So thanks to all of you once again. Do keep coming back to CRG, do keep coming back to India.